Ken knew hardship. He knew the sting of an empty stomach and the coldness of a lonely bed. Orphaned at a young age, life had been a constant struggle. Bullies targeted him, sensing his vulnerability, yet Ken never lost hope. He clung to the dream of a better life, a life filled with purpose and respect. He longed to prove his worth, to show the world he was more than just an orphan. He yearned for adventure, for a chance to be extraordinary. Little did he know, fate had a plan.
One dreary afternoon, while navigating the city's labyrinthine alleys, I stumbled upon something peculiar. It was a symbol etched into the wall, barely visible beneath layers of grime and graffiti. Intrigued, I brushed away the dirt. The symbol depicted a sword piercing a serpent, its intricate design both beautiful and menacing. A shiver ran down my spine. I sensed this was no ordinary graffiti. It was a clue, a whisper from a hidden world.
Driven by an insatiable curiosity, Ken began to research. He spent countless hours in libraries and internet cafes, scouring through dusty tomes and obscure websites. The symbol, he discovered, belonged to a secret agency, an organization shrouded in mystery. Legends spoke of their exploits, of their unwavering commitment to protecting the innocent and upholding justice. Ken was captivated. This was his chance, his opportunity to escape his ordinary life and embrace a destiny far greater.
With newfound determination, I dedicated myself to uncovering the agency's secrets. I followed every lead, deciphered every clue, my heart pounding with anticipation. I knew the risks, but fear was a luxury I could no longer afford. This was my chance to become the hero I always dreamed of being. The orphan was ready to fight for his future.
Weeks turned into months as Ken relentlessly pursued his goal. He learned the city's underbelly like the back of his hand, navigating its dark corners and secret passages. He honed his skills, training in secret, pushing his body and mind to their limits. He knew the agency sought only the best, the brightest, and the bravest. He would not disappoint.
Finally, my efforts bore fruit. I uncovered a hidden message board, a digital haven for the agency's operatives. I studied their cryptic conversations, deciphering their coded language. I learned of their missions, their triumphs, and their sacrifices. I was particularly drawn to the tales of Agent Rake, a legend within the agency, known for his unmatched skill and unwavering courage.
One name echoed through the messages, the Shadow Network. This rival organization, cloaked in darkness, threatened the agency and the world it protected. Ken learned of their ruthless tactics, their hunger for power, and their utter disregard for human life. He knew then that his path was clear. He would join the agency, not just for himself, but to combat this evil, to honor the sacrifices of agents like Rake.
The opportunity arose sooner than expected. A new message appeared, a test for potential recruits. It was a dangerous task, a near impossible mission. Yet, I didn't hesitate. I followed the instructions, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. I navigated treacherous paths, outsmarted seasoned criminals, and retrieved a vital piece of intel. I had passed the test, proving my worth, my loyalty, and my unwavering resolve. The once ordinary orphan was now a recruit of the agency, ready to face any challenge, any danger. My journey had just begun.
The agency's headquarters were hidden in plain sight, disguised as an unassuming office building. Behind its mundane facade lay a world of cutting-edge technology, elite training facilities, and a palpable air of secrecy. Ken, now known by his codename Sparrow, threw himself into his training. He excelled in combat, his agility and street smarts giving him an edge. He absorbed knowledge like a sponge, mastering languages, cryptography, and espionage tactics.
Throughout my training, I heard whispers of Agent Rake. Rake was more than just an agent. He was a legend, a ghost story whispered among recruits. He was said to be unbeatable, a master of disguise and deception, capable of vanishing into thin air. But most importantly, Rake possessed an unwavering moral compass, a dedication to justice that inspired all who knew him.
Ken devoured every scrap of information he could find about Rake, hoping to glean some insight into the mind of a true hero. One story in particular captivated Ken's imagination. It told of Rake's final mission, a desperate stand against the Shadow Network. They were after a device, a key to unimaginable power, and Rake was tasked with protecting it. He fought valiantly, holding off an army of agents single-handedly, but the odds were stacked against him.
In the end, I made the ultimate sacrifice, ensuring the device's destruction and saving countless lives. My death was a devastating blow to the agency, a loss that echoed through the halls to this day.
I swore to myself that I would honor Rake's memory, that I would fight for the same ideals, and that I would never back down from a challenge, no matter the cost.
Years passed, and Sparrow, once the eager recruit, had blossomed into a seasoned agent. He had proven himself time and again, successfully completing dangerous missions across the globe. His courage under fire and his unwavering dedication to the agency's cause earned him the respect of his peers and superiors alike. Yet despite his successes, Sparrow never forgot the legend of Agent Rake. Rake's story served as a constant source of inspiration, a reminder of the sacrifices demanded and the ideals worth fighting for.
One fateful evening, the alarm screeched through the agency's headquarters, its shrill cry sending a jolt of adrenaline through everyone present. The Shadow Network, long dormant, had resurfaced, launching a full-scale assault on the agency. Chaos erupted as agents scrambled to defend their base, repelling waves of attackers pouring in from all sides.
Sparrow, his senses on high alert, joined the fray, his movements a blur as he disarmed and disabled enemy agents with ruthless efficiency. The situation was dire. The Shadow Network had anticipated their every move, infiltrating their defenses and cutting off their escape routes. The air crackled with the sounds of gunfire, the clash of metal against metal, and the desperate cries of fallen comrades.
I fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, my training kicking in as I moved from one firefight to the next, my mind calculating, adapting and overcoming. As the battle raged, a chilling realization swept over me. The Shadow Network wasn't just attacking, they were searching for something. Their movements were too precise, their focus too intense. They were after something valuable, something vital to the agency's operations, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly what it was.
The order came down to evacuate, to regroup and regroup.
Sparrow, his heart pounding, joined a small group of agents led by Agent Weaver, a veteran known for her tactical brilliance and cool head under pressure.
They fought their way through the corridors, the air thick with smoke and the stench of gunpowder. Their escape route led them through the agency's archives, a labyrinthine vault containing decades of classified information, including, Sparrow realized with a jolt, the files on Agent Rake.
As they navigated the maze of shelves, a figure emerged from the shadows, his movements fluid and silent as a phantom. He wore a long coat and a fedora, his face obscured by the dim lighting. He moved with an uncanny grace, disarming and disabling the pursuing Shadow Network agents with terrifying efficiency. Sparrow watched in astonishment, his mind struggling to process what his eyes were seeing. The figure moved like a ghost, his fighting style eerily familiar. "It can't be," Sparrow whispered, his voice barely audible above the din of the battle.
The figure turned, his face momentarily illuminated by a flickering light. Sparrow's blood ran cold. It was Agent Rake, or at least his ghost. His eyes, once filled with warmth and humor, were now cold and distant, devoid of any discernible emotion. He moved like a machine, his actions precise and deadly, his focus solely on eliminating the enemy.
Sparrow's mind reeled. Rake was dead, killed in action years ago. His sacrifice was a matter of agency legend, yet here he was standing before them, alive and as deadly as ever. Was he a figment of Sparrow's imagination, a hallucination brought on by stress and fatigue? Or was he something else entirely, something that defied explanation?
Before Sparrow could dwell on the impossible, Agent Weaver snapped him back to reality. "We need to go now," she yelled, her voice barely audible above the chaos.
Sparrow hesitated, his gaze fixed on the spectral figure of Agent Rake. Rake, oblivious to their presence, continued his relentless assault, cutting through the enemy ranks like a scythe through wheat. Sparrow felt a surge of conflicting emotions, awe, disbelief, and a profound sense of unease.
"Sparrow!" Weaver shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him along. "We can't help him if we're dead."
Reluctantly, Sparrow allowed himself to be dragged away, his gaze lingering on Rake's retreating figure. They plunged deeper into the archives, the sounds of battle fading behind them. Sparrow's mind raced, trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. Rake was alive, but something was different, something was wrong. He seemed distant, detached, almost mechanical in his movements. They finally reached a fortified door, the last barrier between them and the relative safety of a hidden escape tunnel. Weaver fumbled with the lock, her hands trembling slightly.
"Hurry!" she hissed, her voice laced with urgency.
Just as the lock clicked open, a deafening explosion rocked the archives, showering them with dust and debris. The ground trembled beneath their feet and a wave of heat washed over them. They had been cut off, their escape route was blocked, they were trapped. Despair threatened to consume Sparrow, but he pushed it down, forcing himself to focus on the situation at hand. They were trapped, their backs against the wall, with no apparent way out. He glanced at Weaver, her face pale but resolute. They were out of options, facing insurmountable odds. Yet Sparrow refused to give up. He had come too far, fought too hard to die here. in this dusty tomb of secrets.
He scanned their surroundings, his eyes searching for any possible advantage, any glimmer of hope. His gaze fell upon a narrow ventilation shaft high up on the wall, barely visible in the dim light. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was their only chance. "Weaver," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "I have an idea, but I'm going to need you to cover me."
Weaver, without hesitation, raised her weapon, her eyes scanning the corridor for any sign of movement.
Go, she said, her voice firm. I'll hold them off as long as I can.
Sparrow didn't waste another second. He sprinted towards the wall, his agile frame allowing him to scale the shelves with ease. He reached the ventilation shaft, its metal grating cold and slick beneath his fingers. He pulled, but it wouldn't budge. It was bolted shut.
Sparrow, hurry! Weaver shouted, her voice strained with effort.
He could hear the distinct staccato bursts of gunfire, the metallic clang of bullets ricocheting off the metal shelves. She couldn't hold them off forever. He had to act fast. He drew his pistol, its weight familiar and reassuring in his hand. He aimed at the bolts, his breath catching in his throat. He hated wasting bullets, especially in their situation, but they were out of options. He squeezed the trigger, the deafening roar of the gunshot echoing through the confined space. The bolts holding the grating shattered, sending shards of metal flying through the air. Sparrow quickly pried it open, creating a narrow escape route. He turned back to Weaver, his heart sinking as he saw she was outnumbered, surrounded on all sides by Shadow Network agents. He aimed his weapon, his finger hovering over the trigger. But he knew he couldn't risk hitting her. He had to trust her. Had to believe she could hold them off long enough for him to get help.
"Weaver, go. I'll find a way out, I promise."
Weaver, her face a mask of determination, didn't even glance back.
"Just go, Sparrow. It's an order."
Sparrow hesitated for a moment longer, his gut churning with guilt and fear. He had to trust her. He had to go. With a heavy heart, he turned and squeezed through the narrow opening, the metal grating scraping against his back. The ventilation shaft was dark, cramped, and coated with dust and grime. Sparrow crawled through the tight space, his movements hampered by his gear and his growing sense of claustrophobia. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and burnt metal, a constant reminder of the battle raging below. He pushed himself forward, driven by a potent cocktail of adrenaline, fear, and an unwavering determination to survive. As he crawled, he couldn't shake the image of Agent Rake from his mind. The way he moved, the way he fought, it was as if he had stepped out of a legend, a ghost, returned from the grave. But there was something different about him, something cold and distant in his eyes. He seemed less like a man and more like a machine, a weapon programmed for destruction. Sparrow couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong and that, whatever it was connected to the Shadow Network's attack. Sparrow emerged from the ventilation shaft into a small, forgotten storage room. He gasped for breath, his lungs burning from the exertion and the dust-filled air. He quickly got his bearings, his mind racing. He had to find a way to contact headquarters to call for reinforcements. He couldn't let Weaver down. He had to save her, had to save them all. He made his way through the labyrinthine corridors, his senses on high alert, his hand hovering near his weapon. The building was eerily silent, the only sounds the distant echoes of gunfire and the pounding of his own heart. He finally reached a communication room, its door lying ajar. He cautiously entered, his weapon raised, his finger on the trigger. The room was in disarray, papers scattered everywhere, chairs overturned, and the air thick with the smell of burnt electronics. He moved towards the main console, his eyes scanning the blinking lights and the jumbled mess of wires. He had to bypass the security protocols, establish a secure connection. He worked quickly, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his mind racing to recall his training. He finally managed to establish a connection, the screen flickering to life, displaying the worried face of the agency's director.
Sparrow, report. What is your status? What is the situation?
Sparrow took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. He quickly relayed the events of the attack, the Shadow Network's assault, their desperate escape, and his encounter with the spectral figure of Agent Rake. He finished his report, his voice cracking with fatigue and emotion.
"Weaver, she stayed behind to cover me. She's trapped in the archives."
The director's face hardened with resolve.
We're on our way, Sparrow. Hold tight, we'll get Weaver out of there.
True to his word, reinforcements arrived within minutes, their arrival heralded by the deafening roar of helicopter blades and the screech of tires on asphalt. Sparrow, guided by the director, led the assault team back into the heart of the agency headquarters, their movements swift and precise, their weapons at the ready. They fought their way through the remaining pockets of resistance, their training and determination overcoming the enemy's superior numbers. They finally reached the archives, the air thick with smoke and the stench of gunpowder. Sparrow's heart pounded in his chest, his fear for Weaver fueling his every step. They breached the barricaded entrance, weapons blazing, their movements a blur of controlled chaos. The room was in ruins, bookshelves toppled, papers scattered everywhere, and the air thick with tension. And there, in the center of it all, stood Agent Weaver, her back against a wall, her weapons smoking, surrounded by a ring of unconscious Shadow Network agents. A wave of relief washed over Sparrow as he rushed to her side, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. She was alive. She was safe. He had kept his promise. The battle was won. The Shadow Network defeated. Their plans thwarted. But the victory felt bittersweet. The agency had suffered heavy losses, their headquarters lay in ruins, and the mystery surrounding Agent Rake's return remained unsolved. As Sparrow looked around at the destruction, at the faces of his fellow agents etched with fatigue and loss, he knew that their fight was far from over. The shadows were receding, but they had not been vanquished. They would be back, he knew it, and when they returned, he would be ready. The agency rallied, rebuilding their headquarters stronger and more determined than ever before. Agent Weaver made a full recovery, her spirit unbroken, her resolve strengthened by the ordeal. Sparrow's actions during the attack, his courage, his quick thinking, and his unwavering loyalty did not go unnoticed. He was hailed as a hero, his name whispered with admiration and respect throughout the agency. He had come a long way from the scared orphan who had stumbled upon their doorstep all those years ago. He had found a home, a family, and a purpose far greater than himself. In a private ceremony held in the newly rebuilt headquarters, Sparrow stood before the agency's director and a small gathering of his most trusted colleagues. He felt a mix of pride and humility as the director presented him with a medal, its intricate design a symbol of the agency's highest honor. It was the same medal that had been awarded posthumously to Agent Rake, a symbol of their shared courage, their unwavering dedication, and their willingness to sacrifice everything for the greater good.
Sparrow, you have proven yourself to be a true agent, a worthy successor to the legacy of Agent Rake. You have faced danger with courage, adversity with resilience, and you have always put the safety of others before your own. You are an inspiration to us all.
Sparrow accepted the medal, its weight a tangible reminder of the responsibility he now carried. He was no longer just an agent, he was a protector, a guardian of hope in a world shrouded in shadows. He glanced around the room, at the faces of his fellow agents, their eyes filled with admiration and respect. He saw Weaver standing among them, a proud smile gracing her lips. He had found his place, his purpose, and he would not let them down. He would honor Rake's memory, protect the innocent, and fight for a better tomorrow. The orphan who had once dreamed of a life filled with purpose had found it, exceeding his wildest dreams. He was no longer defined by his past, but by the choices he made, the sacrifices he was willing to make, and the unwavering belief that even in the darkest of times, hope could still prevail. He was Sparrow, agent of the agency, protector of hope, and his journey had just begun.